Member for St. James North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am happy to intervene in this debate of the resolution so eruditely laid by my colleague, the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, and contributed to an extremely high level of debate by the Honourable Member for St. James Central, of course, with his special knowledge as well as a member of the then Public Accounts Committee. This is not a debate that ought to have been before this Parliament, because a government that is duly elected by the people of Barbados and a cabinet that is thereafter so constituted ought to govern with transparency, with accountability, with good governance. That should be the norm in the second decade of the 21st century. There should be no debate on that issue. But yet we are here today, sir, because the Public Accounts Committee under the last term of this Parliament, a committee that, of course, is constitutionally and legally established by law since our independence constitution 52 years ago, and of course chaired by the leader of the opposition, and for good reason so. Our founder fathers put that the Public Accounts Committee should be chaired by the leader of the opposition. We are here because that committee found it fit, and correctly so, to inquire into the reports of the Auditor General in 2013 into the state of a major statutory corporation of this country, the National Housing Corporation. It sought to inquire almost from the time we were constituted as a Parliament. Its first meeting was on the 17th of June 2013, just less than 4 months after the 2013 elections. It sought to inquire as to advances of $2.2 million made by the Ministry of Finance to the National Housing Corporation without parliamentary approval or without any agreement for the advancement of this money as contemplated by a law of the Barbados, as has been said by previous speakers on this side, a law of Barbados called the Financial Management and Audit Act, and the regulations made thereunder. An extremely important act, sir, in terms of maintaining the financial integrity of the government and Parliament of Barbados. This, sir, arises then out of the examination of those reports of the Auditor General, and simply because the last government refused to lay this report in Parliament. It had adequate time to do that. They went on past the 11th hour, past closing time in the last session. 5 years gone and they're still holding on. The people spoke towards that, sir, with a resounding victory by this party, and consequently a resounding defeat by those in office at the last time. 30 love, as the Honourable Member of St. James Central said, a historical precedent, and that is why we are here today. But let's examine all the malfeasances which stemmed from that. Section 15 of the Public Accounts Committee Act says that a person who is summoned before the committee shall not, without reasonable excuse, and proof of reasonable excuse lies with him. He has, or she has to prove that they have a reasonable excuse. They shall not fail to appear or to continue in attendance once they have been summoned by that committee. So there's a serious committee. This is not pitching marbles or some kind of foolishness that we, that the Dems will have us understand. This is a serious, major committee of this Parliament of Barbados, the highest court in the land of this country. And it was absolute and total disrespect for 3 cabinet ministers, a minister of finance, a minister of housing, who by then was minister of transport, and a present minister of housing, not to appear before that committee. Absolute disrespect, not of the people of this Parliament, sir, but the people of Barbados who elected them. And to get lawyers to write saying that they're not appearing. And the lawyers, sir, the usual suspects, sir, that transcended the whole DLP administration. The usual suspects. One, former chairman of a tribunal dealing with employment rights issues, given a QC just before the 2013 election, which surrounded this whole aspect of things, and then 2 others now given just before last election, all on the eve of elections, as rewards for the messiness and the dirtiness that they did on behalf of the Democratic Labour Party government. You imagine, sir, this side, sir, has about 10 lawyers, sir, all of eminence in their respective fields. I could not imagine any one of my colleagues on this side picking up pen, putting it to paper, and writing a public accounts committee, the most serious and significant committee of the highest court of the land of Barbados, to say that somebody who they're representing, saying that they're their client, will not appear before the committee. And that somebody is a minister of government who is supposed to give total account to the people who elected them to this Parliament, sir. Their refusal to come, sir, shows in absolutely clear terms why they are no longer fit. In fact, they were never fit in the first place to be elected to the Parliament of this country. And God willing, sir, let us hope they will never see either of them the inside of this Parliament again. Because, sir, we are thankful for the Honourable Member for St. Philip North, and the Honourable Member for St. Lucia, and the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest, who now sit in this Parliament. They have done a national service to this country by removing those 3 persons from the face of this Parliament. Then, sir, there was an attempt, and for this you blame the then Prime Minister. The then Prime Minister, because he was head of the cabinet, he was their leader. To attempt to repeal the Act.
That's right.
But sir, this Act is one of the most important acts on the laws of Barbados that sit all about this Parliament. I think they have 3 sets on this floor. I mean, I remember, sir, when I first saw that come up before Parliament, Public Accounts Committee Repeal Act 2014. I mean, I really and truly had to put on my glasses, take them off, put on a second set, because I could not believe that a government of the day would seek to repeal a Public Accounts Committee Act. laid the bill on the 30th of January 2014 for that repeal, holding it like a sword of Damocles over the heads of the opposition, saying that if you're all going to looking into our dirty and messy business that we want to hide up from the people of Barbados, we're going to abolish your period. That is unheard of in the history of parliamentary democracy throughout common law countries and the Commonwealth of which Barbados is a member, sir. But, you know, these advances were made to the National Housing Corporation without parliamentary approval. As I said, sir, this Parliament of Barbados, sir, is not some unelected club that you elect at some place or another within the halls of the DLP. This is a parliament where all of us had to go knocking at people's doors asking for votes subject to public scrutiny. Serious place. And you advance monies to a major statutory corporation, sir, of which you were one time the minister with oversight, so you know well about it, without parliamentary approval. The chairman, then chairman, between 2008 and 2013, a close blood relative of the minister at that time, he refused to give evidence to. And he too ought to be ashamed of himself. He's an attorney at law. He ought to know better. But he said, I ain't coming before this committee. And even after the leader of the opposition wrote, the now honorable Prime Minister of this country, wrote the Speaker of Parliament asking him to write the chairman to come and appear before the committee. And the Speaker, it's true that he took about 6 weeks to write the letter.
Is it the present Speaker? The present Speaker?
No, sorry, the then Speaker, sir. The Speaker at that time, sir. The then member for St. Michael West, sir, did write the chairman of the NHC, the person who was chairman between 2008 and 2013, telling him he has to appear. But even then, he ignored him. These were demagogues to themselves. Chairman of a board, which is before the Public Accounts Committee, and he not appearing, but doing a lot of dark deals at the 11th hour. The general manager, sir, she gave evidence twice, and then suddenly she is sick in perpetuity. Sick leave certificate on 8 or 9 occasions, sir. And one of these suspect attorneys at law, sir, doing all the dirty work for the Democratic Labour Party government, writing and sending in saying that she's sick. Well, I mean, the honourable member for St. Andrew, the present Minister of Housing, did what he had to do in terms of her case, sir. Because, you know, sir, I, as an attorney at law, I do criticize lawyers in here regularly. My profession is not beyond criticism, but I also have to criticize the medical profession. Because this thing about a doctor writing sick leave certificates for people, you know, so that they don't come to work, sir, or don't come before a committee, has to be looked at too. Because corrupt practices is corrupt practices, sir, and corruption doesn't only stem in 1 or 2 professions, sir. If it stems in the medical profession, we have to deal with this, because I don't understand how suddenly, whenever a Public Accounts Committee meeting comes and you summon, you sit for 9 straight times. But this is the kind of nonsense in the names of governance that went on with the last administration. And sir, all erudite legal opinion throughout common law jurisdictions globally, because a legal opinion was sought, and all erudite legal opinion opinions anywhere in countries of similar democratic background as that of this country, tells you that when you are summoned to a public accounts committee hearing, you have to come. You can't contend that you have some kind of privilege and you don't have to go. Their contention, that of the ministers and the chairman, was baseless. Then you had files disappearing, sir, from the corporation. Files suddenly disappearing, can't be found for 8 months. Something that is a criminal offense as far as I'm aware, to hide a file belonging to the government. Lack of transparency, lack of accountability. The simple reality, sir, is that the Minister of Housing in the first term of the Democratic Labour Party, the then Member of Parliament for St. Philip North, and the Cabinet of Barbados broke the law. That is the long and short of it, sir. They broke the law. And you can't be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker too. The two can't come together, sir. They're totally apart. Advances were made. $2.46 million, as the honourable members on this side who spoke before me said, made monthly to the NHC from government from 2010 without parliamentary approval, in breach of the Financial Management and Audit Act. Should have come to Parliament every month. You got to make 2.5 million payments to the NHC to pay the employees who came on there, and other debts. And sir, let's look at this seriously. The then Democratic Labour Party government had a majority in this Parliament. In other words, if they had come to Parliament for approval because of numbers, they would have won support with our opposition, sir, but they would have had approval for these transfers. So what is the reason why they didn't want to come to Parliament to gain approval for these transfers? Why didn't they want the public, the opposition, to know? This is not the way to govern a country. And Mr. Speaker, this is why the people of Barbados hopefully have decided that none of the 30 of those that run for the Democratic Labour Party last election, this year, should see the inside of this Parliament at all, at any time in the future. The National Housing Corporation, sir, was effectively insolvent. That's the word used. Bankrupt. Easier word. Because of the Democratic Labour Party's policies. We would have heard earlier in this debate that they employed 200 people between the two elections in 2008 and 2013. 50 more in addition to the 200 came on, as the Honourable Member for St. James Central said, within the last 2 months of the 2013 election, in unsustainable positions to the Bush NHC lots that they couldn't even get sold. There weren't too many anyway. No money to do that. The Ministry of Finance in the report said that they didn't give approval. There was no money to pay these people. It was unsustainable. And not surprisingly, immediately after the election, they were sent home. Couldn't be sustained. If you remember, sir, as we all recall, within 10 months of the 2013 election, the National Housing Corporation's staff was cut by close to 50%. This was a Minister of Housing, the then Member of Parliament for St. Philip North, using people, sir, using Barbadians for political ends, for votes. And this is why, and similarly, a lot of deals would have been done within the last 2 weeks of the 2013 election. That minister writing his cousin, the then chairman, saying that he had to give a contract to somebody else, misleading the whole process, the corporation and everything, without cabinet approval at that time, without the NHC board approval. And it's the National Housing Corporation that ought to have made that decision for then ratification by the cabinet, not the other way around. Nobody beside the chairman of the board apparently knew about all of this. And on a premise that was a lie, that the company previously given the contract couldn't finance the project, which was shown to the Public Accounts Committee to be not true. That is what went down for governance in this country. They declared a dividend from the Housing Credit Fund to pay $30 million to the contractor. The Honourable Member for St. James Central and you, my Lord, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as a former Minister of Housing, spoke on these matters, fully aware that no government could declare a dividend on a housing credit fund, a trust fund, and an opinion from government's legal advisors to say that that was illegal, but yet done to pay the contractor at Grotto $30 million. Then, sir, National Housing Corporation, competent lawyers, chief legal officer gave evidence before the committee and competently qualified to have oversight over any legal contract. In fact, that was her job. But because this contract had big money, sir, millions of dollars, and remember, the contract at the Grotto moved from $18 million to $28 million without any rhyme or reason. 4 extra units built costing $10 million. No explanation given. And the National Housing Corporation has in-house lawyers that get paid monthly, that they don't have to pay extra, who could review that contract between the NHC and the contractors of that development. But yet they give an outside lawyer, a former candidate of the Democratic Labour Party, the contract to review at the cost of $600,000.
Was that you said?
Pardon, sir?
Was that repeat? I didn't hear exactly what you said.
An external lawyer, sir, lawyer outside the corporation. When the corporation has 2 or 3 attorneys at law, 3 at least, who could easily overview any contract, the qualified. But yet you take that contract and give it to another lawyer, former Democratic Labour Party candidate, sir, to review, and pay him $600,000 or $700,000 to review it. So that's $10 million, sir, additional from Grotto, another $600,000, sir. All of this taxpayers' money that gone through the Edos, declaring a dividend, $30 million gone from the Housing Credit Fund. And all of this, sir, is the reason now why this government's hands are tied. And what you would have heard from the Honourable Member for St. Andrew, that about 20-something thousand people, 25,000 I believe it is, or even more people on a list at the National Housing want to buy land or land and house and can't buy it because the National Housing Corporation is insolvent, bankrupt, has very few houses, very little land that they could sell to Barbadians whose only desire is to own a piece of the rock. But that then member for St. Philip North, sir, he and his cabinet are the reason why the National Housing Corporation right now can't provide houses or housing solutions to Barbadians. They give away covertly, as we heard earlier in this debate, 100-year lease, 99-year lease at $100 annually. 5 whole acres of land, sir. 5 acres of land, 216,000 square feet of land at $100 for 99 years in perpetuity, lawyers would call it. That's what they gave it away for. Totally, that then minister totally breached the financial rules in terms of awarding contracts. We had no authority to do so. Then the report speaks about the slow pace of sale of lands and property. You would recall, sir, that Lancaster finished. I spoke in here as an opposition member of parliament on it many times, paint up pretty rainbow colors, sitting down for 3 years, unsold, no housing solutions. I pass in it every day because they're near my home. Then they take a decision to transfer units to those living in NHC units for over 20 years, no further funds. They took the decision, sir, but the people most of them still don't have the conveyances, as the honourable member for St. Michael Northwest and our friend, the honourable member for St. Michael's Southeast, Lord be with her, know full well. So no funds coming into the corporation, sir. There was a serious overreach by that minister into the directly into the day-to-day management of the National Housing Corporation. Not understanding his role as a minister, sir. Not understanding his obligations to the country, to the laws of Barbados. A serious undermining in the integrity of the governance of our country. And the deals made up to the cabinet meeting before the election in 2013, binding a government if there were to be a change of party into the government. And this again happened this year, sir, in this election, where this new Barbados Labour Party administration is now constrained by appointments and reappointments of people in statutory boards, both and in commissions, public service commissions and police service commissions that bind our hand. This is not right, sir. This is to the detriment of Barbados and its people. Checks and balances need to be put in place, and this is why this Barbados Labour Party in its Covenant of Hope 2016 and in our manifesto speak towards good governance, sir, permitting everyone to have a voice in the decision-making processes and giving the public timely information.
5 minutes more.
Thank you, sir. And giving the public, letting the public know what we are doing, timely and accurate information, holding decision makers accountable, sir. And that's why you've seen the Honourable Prime Minister, sir, speak more, in fact, within her first month as Prime Minister than her predecessor Prime Minister in the Democratic Labour Party spoke in his whole 7 years, 7 months, 7 days as Prime Minister of Barbados, informing the public. We have vowed to be transparent, to be responsive, to be inclusive, to be equitable, because that is what governance is about, sir. And then, sir, what is as bad as everything else that I have said? The Minister of Housing in the last term of office of the Democratic Labour Party, then the Member of Parliament for St. Lucie, he follows the extremely poor example of his predecessor in that ministry by intruding into the day-to-day affairs of the NHC. to the financial detriment of the corporation and of the people of Barbados. As the honourable member, my colleague for St. James Central said, the directors of the corporation get a valuation, professional valuation, sir, saying that land at Lancaster is worth $65 a square foot. Commercial land. And that individual, sir, who still goes in on brass tacks. I don't know what for. Nobody wants to hear him. The people spoke on May the 24th. The right and great people of St. Lucie spoke. And he intervenes and says, no. We're not swapping this land at $65 a square foot. $35 a square foot would do in order to erase the debt to that particular property owner. This now costs the taxpayers of Barbados at $30 a square foot, the difference between 65 and 35, close to $1 million, sir. $1 million. So you add that on to the $600,000 in unnecessary legal fees, to the $10 million additional for Grotto, to the housing credit fund, to everything else, and it adding up and adding up and adding up, sir. And you want to know why the government of Barbados, when we took it over on May 24th, was effectively bankrupt. Only $220 million US in foreign reserves, can't pay our overseas debts, and now having to retrench workers, sir. But, sir, there is a case on that on point in my considered legal opinion, sir. The Caribbean Court of Justice, which is the highest court of Barbados, sir, in a case out of Belize, very similar, sir, where two government ministers sold land at an undervalue to their friends. And ultimately, the Caribbean Court of Justice said, can't do that. You two ministers have to pay back the difference in money. You personally liable. $500,000 US, I think it was in that case. Abuse of public office. Misconduct in public office, sir. In my opinion, on all fours with what the then Minister of Housing, the last Minister of Housing under the Democratic Labour Party did. And he, sir, can pay back the $1 million, sir. He always speaks about Moontown, sir. That easy, as I would say. Well, let's get back this $1 million from him, sir, because surely that intervention was a misconduct of an abuse of public office, sir, which has added to the cost.
Please conclude.
Yes, sir, I will. But, sir, all of this, sir, can be avoided, and this government is committed in our manifesto to establishing the Office of the Contractor General as an independent entity to review contracts of central government and statutory corporations. These kind of actions which took place at the level of the National Housing Corporation and the ministers of housing in conspiracy with the ministers of finance and the cabinet of Barbados ought never ever to happen again in the future history of this country. I thank you, sir.